industry reaction to the government communication this morning about Section 21, breaking news across the private rented sector, and who better to discuss this with than Paul Shamplina, founder of Landlord Action. And Paul, I've had to read through the communication quite a few times because it's actually left me with more kind of questions than answers. I don't think it's particularly clear.
Well, it is unclear. It's a little bit open-ended. So there's no surprise. I've been saying for quite a while now that Section 21 is going to be diluted. From what I understand from the press release, it's not going to be abolished. They say non-fault, and I mentioned about the non-fault status where it got banded about. It started actually from the Panorama programme, and they came into our office, and I said, let's be very clear. Landlords evict tenants as a last resort, and there was always a reason. It's not a non-fault. And we did a survey, and 56% of landlords serving Section 21 notices relate to rent arrears. Landlords don't want to go down the Section 8 route, and they know they can't get their rent. They just want the property back. So what's going to happen, and I predict most probably will happen because I did the consultation on the longer term tenancies and the housing courts, is I think that you won't be able to evict a tenant under Section 8. If you want to move back into the property, that's going to be the ground under Section 8. If you want to sell the property, and we know landlords are sold under Section 24, that's going to be ground under Section 8. So more landlords will have to revert back to Section 8. I don't think it'd be abolishment. The reason why what they're saying about the non-fault is because they're saying tenants have been unfairly evicted, more so families, and there have been changes of landlord circumstances, and because of those changes, good tenants have been served Section 21 notices, 2-month notices. But it says in a press release that landlords can still serve notice for legitimate reasons. So it was always going to happen in my eyes because of the way everything's gone through politically and obviously through the media. But Section 21 is going to be diluted, and your guys that tune into Property Tribes do need to realise the game's changing.
It is changing. It's interesting because let's say I have a tenant that is always late paying his rent. He's difficult to get hold of. He's not particularly truthful, not giving me access. That would typically be the kind of profile of a tenant that I would serve a Section 21 to. Who's going to determine if those are legitimate grounds?
Well, that's a really good example because normally when Section 21 served, it's amalgamation of various reasons. Yeah. And obviously, what do landlords want? Guaranteed security. They want to know their rent's going to be paid on time. And actually, that is why it is continuously used. What will happen is, I predict that it will be harder, most probably, for landlords to get possession, because if a tenant is in arrears and it's less than 2 months and it's discretionary grounds, they might have to serve a Section 8 notice. What the government are, the bigger picture is the government are encouraging longer-term tenancies. I can't imagine for one moment they're going to say they're going to be mandatory, because that is going to be another nail in the coffin. We've had enough nails going in the coffin at the moment, right? So a lot of landlords would give longer-term tenancies, but actually 60% of tenants want to be transient, want shorter-term tenancies. But what they have proposed in the consultation for longer-term tenancies is that 3-year tenancies with a 6-month break clause, and you have to enforce it in 6 months. And my argument was, well, what happens if something changes? But if a landlord's circumstances changes further down the line, they might have to serve a Section 8 notice. It's going to be a change, and for some landlords, Section 21 is vital. Especially smaller accidental landlords, because they might have divorced or they might have moved back into property or they have to sell, and actually if a tenant strings it out, you could lose the sale because you can't get vacant possession. So from that press release, it is about longer term security, families having greater security, but I'm pretty sure that Section 21 will be around, but I think it's going to be diluted right down, and I can't imagine that the government talk about open-ended tenancies in that press release, but you can't dictate to landlords how long they should be able to rent a property to, because of course you'll just have more exodus.
It's interesting that Theresa May was actually quoted in the press release as well. It gave it extra.
She used that quote some time ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she used that quote. She stood up in Parliament and made that quote months and months ago, before the B the B came to light properly. So that press release, nothing new. I think it's just the way they released it. I think there will be a consultation on Section 21's itself. There'll be a breakaway consultation, and obviously I'll be all over that for landlords. Don't worry about that.
Good, and so will the RLA and all the other stakeholders.
Yes, most definitely.
I think also that there's been a lot of high-profile stuff about Section 21 in the media. We've had the Generation Rent and Shelter campaign against it. Talking of giving tenants more power, rebalancing the relationship between landlord and tenant. And I have to say, the Fergus Wilson documentary, where he said,
he made the situation even worse.
He did, because he said the landlord holds the power. Yeah. There's only two types of tenants that agree with me or ex-tenants. And I'm sorry, but I cringed when he said that.
I mean, look, I do media a lot, and so who am I to say don't go on TV? But when I knew that he was doing the Panorama programme, and it was a real scoop for Richard, because I know Richard, who did Richard Bilton, who did our episode. I was on the first episode for 17 seconds, right? Literally, and our senior solicitor at Landlord Action, Emma, was on for about 15 seconds. It was very tenant-centric. Landlords are evicting tenants nilly, and of course it's a real political message they're trying to get out there, which all the main, BBC, ITV are very much against rogue landlord this, rogue landlord that. But when I saw that Fergus Wilson was doing that programme, I thought, why would you do that? For me, that's just arrogance, because there's nothing to gain. And all that's going to happen is that Panorama are going to show he's the big horrible landlord who's got loads of money, he's dictating to everyone, and every landlord I spoke to literally cringed when it happened. I'm in charge, I'm going to serve 2 notice, and it must be horrible for a tenant having that over you when you're a good tenant, you look after the property, and a landlord sell, and that happens, and it's all about communication during the tenancy. And of course, let's be very clear, good landlords that are professional landlords, want tenants to stay in longer. If I'm your tenant, I'm a good tenant, and I prove myself in the 6 or 12 month tenancy, and I say, Vanessa, can I have a 3-year tenancy? My kids are at the school. You'll give me a 3-year tenancy. Hopefully, you might put the rent up. I'm only joking. No, but you would do. No, but you don't want the void periods. You don't want the refurb fees and whatever. And I think people miss that, and there is loads of rhetoric, and I get fed up with it. But that's the way it is. The game has changed, and if landlords can't change with all the change that happening, especially legislation changes and all the stuff that you're doing, you've got to think seriously about, do you want to remain in it? Or more importantly, I'll be a bit more passive and I'll get a managing agent to take over the full management. I'll sit back. I don't need the aggravation. And I think we're seeing a lot of landlords do that as well.
Indeed. I just want to say, Paul, just to finish off here, when I started out in life, I was a tenant. And now I'm a landlord. I don't like this them and us kind of.
It's a customer.
It is. They're clients. I've been landlord for 15 years. I've only ever served, I think, 4 Section 21 notices.
We did one case for you, I think.
You've done a case for me. And they were all for rent arrears.
Yes. You wrote off the rent arrears, or you couldn't get the money back.
I couldn't.
You asked me, and I said, Vanessa, it's a waste of time a lot of the time. Landlords write it off, they have a write-off, they can offset it against their tax. Most landlords will go down Section 21, but that's going to change now. They're going to have to go to Section 8. I think that we're going to get a lot busier. The shift at Landlord Action is maybe 60% of Section 8, 40% of Section 21. That's most probably going to go 80-20. It's going to take a few years for this to come in, but I think, we're going to get busier, and we're, on our advice line, and obviously, as brand ambassador with regard to Hamilton Fraser, My Deposits, Property Redress Scheme, we're doing a whole load of education on there, not just for landlords, but obviously for letting agents.
Well, I'm, in the press release it said that the biggest cause of homelessness was Section 21.
Yes.
I do dispute that. What I'm hoping to take a positive away from this is that if landlords are forced down the Section 8 route a lot more, because of, we all know, rent arrears, there's going to be more data, and it's going to show why tenants are being evicted.
Most definitely, and there will be, and of course the argument is when there is rent arrears and money orders, judges, landlords aren't enforcing the money orders, so they don't become on a CCJ. What I do see, I think tenant passporting might be coming in. I think payments of rent will be linked as a rent record, hopefully to Experian and Equifax. That can only be a good thing. But I think we've missed one really important point on Section 21, and we get loads of this. And I put a post on LinkedIn, I had 22,000 views to my post, which was, tenants are still being encouraged by councils to stay put for the whole process of 3 to 4 to 5 months. My series is coming out in June. I've got 2 cases or 3 cases in the series where there are tenants that are staying put. They're on rent arrears, but we've gone down the Section 21 route. They're literally waiting for us to turn up with the bailiff to get this magical bit of paper to go down to the council, and it's because of the housing crisis. And of course, the landlords end up having the burden of that. You know, I speak to councils. I'm hopefully going to go and shadow one council and the environmental health officers and the team like that. They're at breaking point, and of course, we haven't even talked about universal credit. Maybe that might be another episode further down the line.
Paul, there's a much bigger picture here, as you have alluded to, but for now, thank you very much to Paul for giving us his instant reaction to this government communication about Section 21. Obviously, as we've been saying, more to come. It needs more clarity, and I have to point out, it didn't even say on the press release that it was England only.
Yeah, and it is England only.
It's England only.
Yeah. I think there was nothing new in that press release that I hadn't seen before. It was just the date they decided to bring it out, really. Okay. Yeah, so, I think for nothing's changed. If they turn around and said, we are abolishing Section 21s, okay, which is really effectively happened in Scotland to a certain extent, we're having open-ended tenancies, and 3-year tenancy agreements are mandatory for landlords, there will be a much bigger exodus of landlords coming out of the marketplace, unfortunately. But it's just, how the game's changed.
I think that's it.
Gone towards the tenant, client or customer, and it's about greater security. And I think also one thing that we've really missed, a lot of people miss, I think really Grenfell changed a hell of a lot with regard to property safety and how that was happening. And it's unprecedented, the consultations that have happened in the last 3 to 4 years, and the instigation of a lot of stuff that has come in, and they haven't had time to bed in, and then there's something else coming in. Yeah. So the biggest challenge for a landlord is keeping up to speed with everything. And I know your recent campaign of mitigator and risk was really good, so well done with it.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it from us here at the Property Investor Show. The game is changing. More to come, more detail to come about this new dilution of Section 21. And as ever, you can hear it first here on propertytribes.com. Thank you, Paul.